2025 and beyond is looking like a stellar time for role-playing games, and with the upcoming Avowed, there's plenty of anticipation surrounding how it will eventually shape up. Avowed, due for release next month for Xbox and PC, is a first-person fantasy action RPG, and due to that, it has obviously drawn a lot of comparisons with Skyrim, but exactly how similar to BGS's 2011 classic is Avowed going to be? Based on all that we've seen of it so far, Avowed looks like it's going to have a few things in common with Skyrim, but at the same time, it's also setting itself apart in other key ways. Here, that's exactly what we'll be talking about. Fantasy setting. Now let's get things started with the most obvious and surface level similarity between the two games, that both are modern AAA first-person RPGs in a fantasy setting. Avowed is taking players back to Eora, which is the world of the Pillars of Eternity series, though it's going to be set primarily in the Living Lands, a previously unexplored part of the setting. Since its very first cinematic teaser all those years ago, Avowed has echoed Skyrim with its high fantasy setting in some very obvious ways, and that, of course, continues to be the case. Look a little deeper, however, and the differences begin to show. Avowed is not a massive open world. Though Avowed originally set out to make its own version of Skyrim, i.e. a massive open world fantasy RPG, the studio ultimately ended up deciding to scale down instead. Now, Avowed is going to be more in line with The Outer Worlds, a smaller, more condensed experience. Of course, those who wish to engage in a good bit of exploration will still get plenty of opportunities to do that, but you shouldn't go in expecting a sweeping, gargantuan epic similar to Skyrim. Different exploration loop. Given the fact that Avowed's world is going to adopt a different structure from that of Skyrim, naturally, that'll mean the exploration loop is also going to take on a different form. Of course, how much players will want to engage with the optional content will be entirely their decision, something that's true of both games. But from a tighter structure to levels feeling more designed and handcrafted compared to the vast expanses of Skyrim's world, traversing Avowed's maps will have a different flow. Making use of companions' abilities and interacting with different things in the environment will also be important. Oh, and speaking of companions, Avowed is seemingly placing more emphasis on companions. Avowed will have companion characters, and Skyrim obviously had them too, but of course, they go about that in very different ways. Skyrim, for instance, did have its own cast of recruitable companion characters, but these are entirely ancillary and completely missable parts of the game who can have little to no integration with the story, depending on how you played, of course. Avowed, on the other hand, will be more similar to The Outer Worlds, with the companion characters forming a core cast that will have a crucial role to play in the main story from beginning to end. Avowed is looking more story-focused. Avowed's greater focus on its cast of companion characters can be attributed largely to the fact that the game is going to put more emphasis on its main story and storytelling, just period, flat out. Skyrim, like all of Bethesda's RPGs, is more of a massive open-world sandbox where players are free to do as they see fit. A byproduct of that, of course, is that the game's main story ends up feeling relatively weaker and by no means does it remain the main focus. Avowed, on the other hand, is aiming for a narrative-focused experience, with its main story very much being the primary driver of the experience. Factions. Here's an RPG trope that's never going to die out, because why the heck should it? Populating their worlds with different factions with engaging histories, cultures, conflicts, and stories is something RPG developers have done for as long as the genre has been around. Skyrim's world is filled with a variety of different groups and their own dedicated questlines in true Bethesda fashion. The upcoming Avowed 2 will see players encountering a number of different factions as they explore the Living Lands. Then again, the greater focus on player choice will make Avowed's implementation of factions stand out by the look of things. Choice and consequence mechanics. This is an area where Bethesda RPGs have never made too much of a mark, the same being true of Skyrim as well. Now, make no mistake, the open world epics certainly put little to no limitations in allowing players to do whatever they wanted to do, and however they wanted to do it. But though Skyrim always lets you make whatever choices you want, it's not often that you ever actually feel the weight of any of those decisions, no matter how monumental. Successfully seeing the questlines of two rival factions in different direct competition with each other through the completion shouldn't be possible, and yet Skyrim, like other Bethesda RPGs, lets you do that. Avowed, however, is going to be the sort of game where the choices that you make have consequences, which means you can expect the story and the world to react more strongly to your actions and decisions.
But I have to know if anyone else made it out. Of course he did. Sergeant Asui never has a thought he won't say out loud. So what did he tell you? That Captain Ruwiki was sick? That I was paranoid? That I was a dumb baby? I heard it all often and loudly.
Quest structure. Speaking of player choice, Avowed will seemingly allow for plenty of it in terms of the actual moment-to-moment gameplay as well, which of course is an area where Skyrim and other RPGs made by its studio do excel. Nearly every quest in the game had been designed so that players would be able to begin and tackle them in a variety of ways. Skyrim's immersive, sim-esque gameplay sandbox, which lets players go about tackling objectives however they please, is one of its biggest strengths. We don't expect Avowed to be on that same level, it's going for something else after all, but clearly its quest structure seems to be taking a few cues from the Bethesda design playbook. First/third-person options. Here's another way that Avowed is going to overlap with the Skyrim experience, and it's another obvious one. Like Skyrim, Avowed is primarily a first-person experience, and that plain and simple fact has led to countless inevitable comparisons, like this one. Also similar to Skyrim, meanwhile, Avowed is also confirmed to feature a third-person option. How well the gameplay experience will translate to that camera perspective remains to be seen. Skyrim in third person is something of a mixed bag, so here's hoping Avowed doesn't have that in common with it. Combat differences. In spite of the similarities in their camera options, Avowed's combat still seems to be setting itself apart from Skyrim in some unique ways. Experimenting with different kinds of spells and weapons and creating unique combos, like freezing an enemy with an ice spell before using a sledgehammer to shatter them into pieces, is going to be a key part of the combat in Avowed, which promises to lend the combat an interesting moment-to-moment pacing. Other mechanics such as seamless weapon switching, as well as the inclusion of firearms, could also spice up combat in interesting ways. Avowed will be much shorter. Skyrim is obviously an absolute giant of a game with a main story of 30 hours, but a playtime that could easily extend well into the triple digits, courtesy of its oceans of optional content. Avowed, on the other hand, is being designed as a way more contained and compact experience. Avowed is going to be roughly the same in its length as the Outer Worlds, which means we're looking at an experience that'll be anywhere between 15 and 40 hours long, depending on how much of its side content you want to engage with. So, what are your thoughts on this? Go ahead and share them in the comments below. And if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel and enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon to get new video updates. We upload every day and would really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching.